Joey shakes that jig.
And if you didn't, they lost you out.
Even psychologically,
you
sometimes
had to
just
go
having the
out
dark
and
makes it feel a little bit cooler.
Do
Just Michelle laid it.
and then on our Google account, CBC went from their own servers and they all were
Yeah.
giving us Google Mail account.
Yeah.
But you have to
Can make a
like
map.
secret decoder rings
Yeah, and
for
photos.
getting into your Google.
Yeah.
And we give you like 5 seconds to type in your number.
Important is to
And
focus on the
otherwise,
job and
if
finish
you
it.
get the right number right away, it would lock you out. Then you had to use a second set of authentication to
Do
get
you
in.
like the Wellesley
Back-
Snipes?
back when you worked there.
Yeah.
Because that's just everyday life now, but yeah, I can't imagine, I can't believe they did it then.
Wow. Well, that was in 2018.
I would
Well,
focus on.
yesterday at our board meeting for search and rescue, it came up, we did an open house down on the dock. And I created these posters, and on one of the posters, I put a QR code for donations. And apparently the latest scan is people generated QR code. And they printed, so they can stick it over an existing QR code like on a poster. So someone says, oh, we're in search and rescue.
Oh, and they'll stick it on the stickers.
They,
Right.
but it doesn't go to our website.
These scammers are so smart.
Pop the bottom a little bit from the start. You sort of
They
got
really
that,
are.
they're gonna come at it.
Yeah.
Right.
But, you know, so now, we,
And,
you know, we decided that obviously we can't put a QR
But they can
code
deal with it
anywhere
with the best
where it isn't.
face
Mind the mad
on the
handicap?
site.
Yeah.
Yes, I am.
We got tons of people.
We need to be there.
Why would I write in this
Access
building?
but yeah, when it comes to the whole thing.
He's got
I
some-
always
he's got
log
some
into the
strong
town,
Wi-Fi.
why does it go to the mad
Some
handle?
serious Wi-Fi over there.
Finance is saving us money.
We're intentionally trying to steal from
We
them.
used to get
Well,
these phone-
and when I'm on that side of the building, it goes to the library.
We used to get phone calls from this
Weird.
guy at 11 o'clock at night saying, you're stealing my Wi-Fi.
Really?
Like, really?
And where do you live? Delaware? No, it's not me, sorry.
Choose a really, really bad username for your account. Like, our-
They'll never phone you then?
No, it's just like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, don't log into that one.
Okay, I'm still not logged on here, but I'm going to call the meeting to order, this committee of the whole meeting of September the 9th, 2025 of the town of Gibsons. And we are meeting on the traditional territories of the Skokomish Nation. I'm calling the meeting to order at 1 p.m. And first we need to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Kroll. All those in favor? Motion carries. I can only see that Councillor DeAndrade is with us. Is Councillor Lumley with us as well? Okay, I know he was going to try, so hopefully he'll join in. First, we have a report from our Director of Infrastructure Services.
Thank you, Mayor White. So the report before you is looking for some support and direction on a anticipated grant application for a program that should be opening here in the next coming weeks. It is not the formal resolution. The program hasn't opened, so we're not aware of specific language that's required or if a council resolution is required. At this point, we're just looking for support on completing the design to a level that would be supportable for the grant application for improvements, active transportation improvements on O'Shea Road. And within the report, we've kind of designed kind of a preliminary design for improvements all the way from Shaw Road to School Road. The cost of completing the full scope would exceed what we could reasonably cover for our portion of it. So we're making a recommendation to focus on the section from Eagle Crest towards School Road, or we could further shorten the scope from Spyglass to School Road, being the area that is the kind of most efficient in terms of active transportation infrastructure, particularly around the school drop-off and pickup, which that area is encouraged by the school division for parents to use. So in the context of the grant application to the province, we're focusing on the kind of the eastern section of O'Shea Road, and there's recommendations in here for, or the options for improvements from Spyglass to School or Eagle Crest to School, with some pricing included as well. And I think I'll look to the committee for questions at this point. Certainly, the drawings have been included. There's a few different elements included in it, like raised crosswalks and parking bays, sidewalks, and a local street bike improvements that are consistent with the active transportation network plan. But certainly that there's room for discussion on exactly what the design should look like.
Great, I think I see Councillor Thompson, maybe, moved your mic?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll take that as a request to speak.
The report was very clear, but maybe you could just help me understand a little bit better because of the complexity of, so the grant application, the sections, which are 3, and the rationale behind why it's not recommended that you would apply for at least 2 of the 3 to the grant, is that because you're unable to get feedback as to what they would consider as a 2-phase project versus a 1-phase into this calendar year?
Through the mayor, so the rationale with just recommending 1 application is we believe it unlikely that we would get both grant. If we were to submit 2 projects, which is allowable under that grant, we're skeptical that we would receive funding for both. And so we have recommended submitting for 1, which is the highest priority, so that if we are going to get funding, that it be for the highest priority section rather than we get the section in the middle. It seems unrealistic or unlikely that they would award a section in the middle of where there's maybe not improvements on either side, but just to avoid the possibility of getting the least preferred option, we have just recommended, but certainly if there's interest from the committee, we could submit 2 applications, and we can follow up with the grant funders and try to get some clarity on whether they would consider 2 adjacent sections of the same street to be 2 separate projects, or if they would review that and see it as being a little bit of a circumventing of the intention of the program to try to expand the funding available. So I'm not clear on that part of it, but the main reason behind the recommendation for only 1 application is just due to the unlikelihood that we would get both awarded. Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just communicating with Councillor Lemley here to see if his computer's out of batteries, so due to the meeting earlier today. What was I going to say? Yeah, we actually have a meeting scheduled. We're trying to schedule a meeting with the ministry too to talk about this more. They actually reached out to us and said, just in our own ongoing collaboration with on active transportation, they said they'd be open to having a discussion about it. Councillor DeAndrade.
Thank you, Mayor. I think my suggestion is if we can speak with the ministry, why not ask? There's no harm.
We're going to.
Whatever is the answer, then we make a separate application. Or then pick the one that has been suggested now.
Other thoughts on this, Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor White, and thank you for the report. It occurs to me that I would certainly support staff's current recommendation, and certain subject to any additional funding we might be able to get once we speak to the ministry. But it seems to do sense to do the project sequentially rather than hodgepodge.
We did get some public input on this just in the last hour, I think. which I appreciate. I mean, we don't, when people do follow our meeting schedule, and actually, there's not a lot of time for them to give input, so I appreciate somebody did get something in within, prior to the meeting. So I'd like to see, if anybody wants to address that. I mean, I think part of the consideration was like, do we really need to have sidewalks on both sides, particularly when that might limit future possible bike lanes, I think was one consideration in there that the member of the public wanted us to consider. So I'll go to our Director of Infrastructure on that for comments on whether maybe some of that could be integrated or considered further, or whether some of those thoughts are not possible.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor White, and I did see that just before the meeting, so I quickly scanned it, so I didn't get all of the points that were included in there, but I think my main takeaway was there was kind of questioning the rationale of sidewalks on both sides and then the local street bikeway designation for O'Shea Road, which would encourage sharing of the road between cyclists and drivers through signage and paint markings on the street, rather than creating a separated bike lane or dedicated bike infrastructure. The points that were made are certainly valid, and thoughts, I've questioned that myself, or considered that myself as well, given that there's in front of the development at the corner of School Road in O'Shea, the new supportive housing building, there is a parallel sidewalk and multi-use path, which would suggest that that was kind of the vision for the O'Shea Road corridor. The design that has been advanced to date and that we're recommending is consistent with the recommendations of the Active Transportation Network Plan. So I was taking the approach of that plan has been approved and adopted. There was a lot of effort that went into that and thought that went into the design recommendations. So that's what I've brought forward. But given the consideration that the resident has raised, particularly around kids and trying to support kids biking to school, having a dedicated pathway for them to do that on rather than a sidewalk or rather than on the street is, it's a good point. I think there's two different types of cyclists. There's cycling commuters who absolutely should be just taking the lane and biking on the street on O'Shea Road. And then there's kids, and they should have, in a narrow corridor, it probably has, makes sense for them to be somewhere other than just on the street. And so I could discuss with the design team, at this point, to change the design from a sidewalk to a multi-use path, it's gonna have very little, they'll widen it, there'd be a bit more impact to trees potentially, but it's not gonna be a overly rigorous amount of effort for them. So I could have some conversations with the design team around what their thoughts as active transportation engineers on the two options, and whether if we submit an application for a multi-use path rather than staying consistent with what the ATMP recommends, if that would have any negative impact on our likelihood. If we have like a design that's inconsistent with our plan, whether that would be seen by the ministry as maybe weakening the application. But if not, I think it's certainly something that's worth considering.
Yeah, and maybe that's a part of the discussion for the ministry too, as if, they'd favor something that's got more of a bike approach to it. But I mean, I think their approach is generally active transportation is pedestrians as well. But we'll see. I think, biking infrastructure is a big priority for them. Another thought that I've had about that now that you've raised it is that we should probably explore with some of the experts too is if this consideration that's been proposed of having I forget, like a neighborhood, bike-centered transportation route where cars are expected to just be so slow that they're behind bikes, which is great. Like, I think that's totally appropriate in a lot of places. If we're talking about kids on bikes, especially elementary school kids, what's the safest option? I think we should put that out there. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. And I think there's challenges with, because the goal is to avoid conflict between cyclists and drivers. But there's also a goal of trying to avoid conflict between cyclists and pedestrians and slower cyclists. And if we provide a multi-use path that is signed in a way that indicates that's where cyclists should go, people who are maybe, on a 10-speed bike, who are going to be biking 30 kilometers an hour, or 20 to 30 kilometers an hour, are maybe going to be inclined to take that multi-use path. And then that's going to create conflict with people who might be walking on the path or slower cyclists. So it's a bit of a challenge to, it's almost like you mitigate one problem and you can create another conflict. So that's a conversation certainly we can have with the design team. I think my expectation would be, as a parent of a 7-year-old, if I was with my kid and she was biking on that street, I would just take the sidewalk and she'd bike on the sidewalk rather than in traffic. And I think that's probably would be a use, and up to a certain age and a certain speed, that's the most appropriate place for kids to be biking, even though it's not, we don't want adults biking on or teenagers biking on the sidewalk, but certainly young children who are trying to get to elementary school, would be the safest place for them. Even with the paint and the signage as it is, it's not necessarily going to be perfectly appropriate for that use.
I appreciate that, yeah. I think we need to really consider the reality of how different age groups and levels of cyclists are going to use our infrastructure, regardless of how theoretically we want them to use it by designating it a particular pathway or area. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And through you, O'Shea is sort of interesting because from Shaw Road to almost Spyglass on the west side, there is an existing sidewalk. Then we get to Spyglass where in the area of the supportive housing unit, and on the east side, we have sidewalk, but no sidewalk on the west side. And one of the things that really concerns me is, for example, on Venture Way, you suddenly have a situation where you have an active transportation cycle path that all of a sudden in the middle of nowhere switches from one side to the other. And particularly in an area where there are vulnerable children, if you live on the east side of O'Shea, and now you're trying to get across O'Shea to get to the bike lane, I perceive that you've got young people crossing all over the place, which is a potential problem. That's the sort of thing I would like to see mitigated with this proposal as it's developed, is that there are proper safe places where students can cross, and that they are a little safer than they currently are. Like, I've cycled on O'Shea, and if you're cycling as you should with the flow of traffic, it's a little hazardous currently because people do use it at speed because it is currently a fairly wide road. So, when you look at the number of residential properties on the east side, I think it's really important that there's safe passage, regardless of what direction you're traveling on O'Shea.
Okay, some further details to consider for the final application, but I think it's still all captured in the draft motion, probably, right? Yeah. For somebody to move. Do you want to move it, Director of Finance? Okay. Councillor Kroll, he wants us to move along. I'm going to take it as that way anyway. Councillor Thompson seconds that. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we're on to motion to close. And this motion to close is in accordance with section 91K of the Community Charter, which is discussions respecting a proposed provision of a municipal service that are preliminary stages.